So, like I told everyone before, my name is Britton McDowell, and I'm coming on here tonight. We've got a little incident going on. It's impacting us on a global basis. And one of the first people that I've had some in-depth conversations with about, preparedness, about, what we need to do to be prepared, what we need to do for our safety of not just of our individuals, but also for our loved ones and our family. Is Dr. Howard Fisher. Howie's up on the latest research. He's following this thing very closely, and has been impacted by it himself, as he's recently been traveling and now under a little bit of a quarantine for himself as well. So, Howie, if you would go ahead and turn your camera on. I think you're unmuted. I just want to ask, from the first standpoint of things here, what are we dealing with, and what should our level of concern be? Where should we be when it comes to this topic right now?
That's quite a valid and interesting question. The reality is, this is more of a panic-demic than it is a pandemic, and I'll tell you why. Let's go over some numbers first, and then we'll elaborate more on the concern. The bulk of the people who are carrying the virus will not know. Right now, global statistics are saying there's about 335,000 with the virus, 14,000 dead roughly around the world, 100,000 have recovered. So these numbers, with the exception of one, the death rate, are all bogus. Let me tell you why. And by the way, that would work out to about roughly, if those numbers are true, a 4% rate, a death rate. So now let me tell you why they're not true. Now let me tell you why there could be a factor of 10 or 100, and this is not the same status that we think it is. Because if you're asymptomatic and you have not been tested, because we know testing is very low, then you don't know you have it. So if there are 10 times as many, that's a death rate of 0.4. If there are 100 times as many, which is quite viable, quite possible. Let's try and get some light so I don't look like I'm talking from the dark. It's kind of tough because I'm in my quarantine here, which is a lovely one-bedroom condo that belongs to my nephew. All right, how's that? That may be better. And so if we look at these numbers, we have a very low incidence of death resulting from this virus that seems to be highly contagious. So if most people don't know that they have it, and those that many get it, it's gone in 48 hours. If those people don't realize that they have it, don't know that they have it, they're not reporting that they have it, then the numbers are never going to reflect that. Therefore, we're dealing with 15,000 deaths, let's say, and the flu so far this year is about 108,000 deaths. No one's talking about the flu. No one's mentioning regular influenza. So we're dealing with something that's highly contagious that will kill the elderly, because that's who's predominantly being affected, and will kill those who are predisposed or have a priori issues, and they're more than likely to be affected over anyone. And so, as we all know, Rob Cyndia, he described this rather appropriately by saying, it's the wolves thinning out the herd. Think about that analogy. So, is this panic necessary? Not actually, if most people don't get any symptoms. The panic is only in our minds. Precautions, something totally different. Precautions are something that we should all be taking because we do not want to harm the elderly. We do not want to harm anybody who has a less than functional immune system. There are 100 million plus diabetics or pre-diabetics in the US diabetics are susceptible, that doesn't mean they're going to be suffering a mortal illness. So everything we see, and it doesn't matter where it came from, it doesn't matter why it is here, because it is here, it's going to change everything as we know it. It's a major event. And because of that, we have to be intelligent about this major event.
So one thing that I just kind of took away from this is that with this being as highly contagious as it is, the numbers are skewed because of the amount of testing that's not taking place. Because I know here in the United States that most people are not going to be tested unless they're hospitalized. And so what you're saying is there could be a lot of people running around that could be infected that are very asymptomatic, or maybe just some watery eyes and sneezing a little bit here and there, or a little bit of a cough that are spreading the virus, but yet they're not being impacted by the virus.
Correct. And this is absolutely the case everywhere. This is what the Italians right now are lamenting over, the fact that they didn't realize this, because 99% of the deaths in Italy were attributed to a priori disease or elderly. 99% of the deaths. That's a significant number. So there are reasons for where there are outbreak areas in the world. And that's something, if someone wants to discuss that, but right now, I think that's not important. Right now, we have to deal with what we do today, what we do tomorrow, what we do in the future, and what we're looking at.
Well, so if we know that being healthy is obviously the most paramount prevention that we have, is part of the reason why this is affecting more people, certain people more dramatically, maybe because of nutrition, because of previous disease or previous illness, things along those lines, lifestyle, obviously all factors that impact health. So what are your guidelines or recommendations that we need to be doing to protect ourselves, but also protect the ones that we love?
Well, as you know, all HOCA coaches are well up on this. We talk about nutrition. We talk about maintenance of the immune system. We talk about things that you can do that are preventative, that are actually combative for viri, for any kind of illness that you may maintain. How much moringa did you take today? 8 grams? 4 grams? I had 8. Maybe more. And so the reality is we take preventative actions. Did you work out today? Did you walk today? Did you exercise today? Exercise is important. Cardiovascular health is particularly important. This virus targets lung, and that doesn't mean you can't beat the virus, because most people do. But there are some little tricks that you can do, like having a sip of water every 20 minutes, washing it down into the stomach acid where it will die. There are things that making sure your hands are extremely clean. People don't realize about the surfaces. So Dr. Oz had on his show, he had someone walking about the city showing all the potential for spreading it, just doing normal things, going to the ATM. Everybody needs a hand sanitizer in their pocket, or gloves, or masks, or all of this, just for the next 2 months. And if you want some optimism, right now everybody is pessimistic. Everyone's saying, oh, I can't believe this. There have been many plagues throughout history. Right now in Korea, South Korea, we don't know about North Korea, and in China, they've turned this off like a switch. Almost 2 months to the day. So if they can do it, we can certainly do it. So is there a future ahead for us? It's not the end of the world. This is something we have to be aware of. So what do we do on a normal basis? Well, if you get on an airplane, you quarantine yourself for 2 weeks. And understand, and the most difficult part is making the teenagers and young adults understand that very few of them are going to get it. but they can spread it along. It was, I believe, the Israeli health minister who said, don't hug your grandchildren. Think about it. Don't hug your grandchildren because you can be spreading it. And that's what we're seeing now. So we want to curtail this. So clean hands. I came back on a flight and there was a guy in the seat beside me and he coughed like that. And I stared him down. And when he did it again, I said, I'm a doctor. You have to cover that cough. This virus spreads by medium to large size airborne droplets that can stay in the air for 2 to 3 hours. He gave me a really nasty look, like I was crazy. Of course, I was in a mask, actually 2 masks, and gloved. And if people don't understand that there are ways to control contagion, they have to start listening. You have to, if you're coming from outside from a population into your own home, take off your clothes, throw them in the washing machine, put on new clothes, wash your clothes. This is how we can combat this. Hand sanitizer by your door. Clean hands that touch the doorknob. This can live on metal surfaces for up to 9 hours. They can live on copper surfaces for about 4 hours. This can live on cardboard for 4 hours. They don't know how long it can live in clothing because it can hide. So take off your clothing, throw it in the washing machine. We can do this. We can do this. Make sure you use plenty of soap and washing your hands. Be smart about this because it's not a life-threatening virus. It's just a highly contagious virus with a glycoprotein spike that likes to stick in lungs.
Well, Hallie, that those are all great advice. I have read several of the same things that you passed along to me and do this, and so obviously hygiene and being vigilant is very important. Avoiding crowds, social distancing, things along those lines. So can you give so if for some reason you have to go out, what are some ideas or guidelines that you would recommend that people follow having to get out of the house if they have to get out of the house?
Okay, if you have to go out, you must be masked. You must be masked. And then you cannot come near, I'm sorry, but you cannot come near the elderly or the sick. Like you're not going out to go to the hospital to visit your friend. You're just not doing it. You should be gloved. You can't touch surfaces. The woman from Dr. Oz, I think she infected 200 people. She started walking there using the ATM. The next person used the ATM. She bought a newspaper, whatever. Common, ordinary things that no one thinks about. You have to start to be aware because this is going to be the new way. If we just shut down for 2 weeks, the virus would be no more. But that's not going to happen. If you saw the piece on the news of the kid at March break in Florida, he was drinking. The reporter said, "What about coronavirus?" He says, "I'm not ruining my party." So this fella can spread it and spread it and spread it. And so there's far more than 335,000 cases around the world. There's probably closer to 30 million, but its incidence of death is not high. As evidence, listen, the only statistic we know for sure is when, and we don't even know this for sure, is when someone dies, we know that they're no longer alive, but the autopsies are not even really testing, and the tests are not really testing for this specific virus. They're just testing for a coronavirus. So yes, I see Lorraine, Ms. Best is asking, well, masks are porous. Yes, but this is spread by large droplets and medium-sized droplets. Surgical masks are good enough. You can get the N95 mask. You can get the N99 mask. You can get a hazmat suit if you want. It doesn't matter. You have to protect either touching your nose or mouth. These are portals of entries, or your eyes. And people say, I don't touch my face. And I say, well, just start counting from now. How many times in an hour you touch your face? And they'll fight it. People touch their face 100 times a day. And so if you touch something you weren't aware of, you didn't sanitize your hands, you're touching your face, and you may never realize it, but you may be spreading it.
So we've had a couple of questions here. With the shortage of masks, what are some options? What are some other options available that you would recommend? And then some other people were asking. There was a couple of questions about sneezing on here. So address the mask question first. And then
okay.
we'll
cover your face. It doesn't matter if it's a sock or a scarf or whatever, or a bandana, and then wash it when you get home. Cover it. Put some obstacle, because these are not the smaller droplets. This is spread by airborne droplets, which are lasting up to 3 hours in the air from someone who sneezes. And back to your question of sneezing. If you're going to sneeze, cover. If you don't have anything with something significant to block the spray, if not, into your elbow. And why your elbow? Because the crook of your elbow will force anything that's expelled from you down to the ground, right? Down. It's going down. If it hits the ground, nature will deal with it. Ozone will deal with it from the sun. Sunlight will deal with it. So that should be anything you can do to cover, right? And glasses, it's more if you walk into something, can it go through the eye? Sure it can. But you can put on sunglasses. Good enough. Just don't touch your face. Don't touch your eyes. Don't touch other people. Fist bumps, switches with the back of your knuckle, because you know what? People, when they touch themselves, touch with their palmar surface. So the back of your knuckle. We're trying to go over all of this, but self-isolation is critical. If you have children, it's more difficult. It's more difficult. And I believe in the 50-foot circle if I can, Lorene, but 6 feet will do. But understand that when you sneeze, it's at 100 miles per hour. So yeah, 6 feet is not there. I'm crossing the street if I'm out for a walk, but I can't walk now. I'm quarantined. So what does quarantining mean? What does that mean? Does that mean you can go to the store and get something? No, it doesn't. Because you're exposing yourself to the air that's there. And unless you're in a hazmat suit with an N95, right? That's not quarantining. Quarantining is allowing your body to demonstrate whether or not you have symptoms. You know, if you don't have symptoms, they won't test you. And that's why the numbers are so low. And my understanding is that in North America, the governments did the exact right thing in closing down as much as they could, because people don't listen. People don't listen. If you're not listening to the advice, you don't get it. I had some woman challenging me on statistics on the internet. And, you know, I don't have time for this nonsense. Common sense dictates that we can't count who has this virus. So it's definitely higher than the number stated. And it's probably exponentially higher. Common sense dictates that if they say there's 108,000 deaths from the flu, and there's only 14,000 deaths from this, either the incidence of the flu is extremely higher or more virulent than this. So everybody's panicked. Oh my God, oh my God. What we're trying to do is shut down the 2-week period so people understand that this will go away and you're not going to be one who's spreading it. And the reason it's going to take 2 months or 4 months is because people will continue to spread it. So as you know, I'm in a specific situation with family members that have lowered immune systems. So I will continue a pseudo quarantine for much longer until I can see a lymphocyte count back in the 5s. So a normal immune system. So, but that's the reality. It's not a severe hardship. And we have solutions. You know we have solutions. You're privy to the solutions, and you can help anyone get the solutions. Well, I wouldn't call it colloidal silver. There's an emerald activated silver sol, which functions differently, but yes, if all you can get is colloidal silver, okay, great. But if you can get the good stuff, get the good stuff. Because you should. A dual technology makes a lot more sense than a single technology that may or not, maybe ionic silver, which is not the same at all. And I'm in the middle of writing a paper with Dr. Igor Smirnov on the efficacy and potency of the dual technology. So it's interesting to know that coronaviruses are not new, and they have been getting defeated for a long time. This is just another one that came on very suddenly, and no one believed it would escape because no one closed the borders early enough. However, they were closed, and I don't think that happened in Italy. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing.
Well, Howie, you know, there's a lot of, you've done a great job outlining what we can do here. And some people ask, you know, things about, you know, you talked about the emerald activated silver. We talked about moringa, other things that we can do to maximize our own personal health. As we move forward, is it safe to say that we should that we should all basically consider, are all going to have to consider, or should act under the premise that we are contagious and that we isolate ourselves, A, to prevent it, and then, but B, but also I think the biggest thing in the U.S. that they're talking about is they're shutting things down so that as the rate of infection goes up, to minimize or to decrease the impact on the medical system because they don't want to overload it. Is that?
It's called flattening the curve. We have to flatten the curve for the increase here, because if you continue to spread it, we will have enough. If the numbers are 335,000 around the world, it's not going to do anything around the world. It's not impactful. If the numbers are actually, you know, 3 million or 33 million, that can overload a medical system just based on the minor percentage of those who will suffer symptoms. And so it's not the death rate. Will people die? Yes, they will. But it's not going to be the 20 to 50 million of the Spanish flu in 1918. Right? That was pre-airplanes, and that was a virulent coronavirus. I mean, we're not new to coronaviruses. We're not new to any of this. What we're new to is limitations on our freedom of motion, and that's causing people to panic. That's causing people to buy up all the toilet paper, to buy up all the facial tissue, to buy up everything they can. So that's panic mode. We have the tools, and the tools are available.
Well, Howie, we're getting close to the bottom of the hour here. So, you know, you've talked about the importance of hygiene. You've talked about the importance of being vigilant in what we do. As we wrap up, what else do we need to be mindful of, or should we be, should we expect over the next few months? Because we know it's going to spread. We know that that those that are most susceptible will show symptoms, and then those that are the dangerous category may require hospitalization and things along those lines. So what should we expect, and how should we prepare for that over the next, you know, say 30, 60, 90 days?
You know what, your estimate is good. 30, 60, 90 days is a good estimate. And those numbers will come to fruition based on how we act, how our children act, how the youngsters act. Are they going into situations where they're going to be the carriers of contagion? Are they going into situations where they're going to be spreading the viri at virtually everywhere so that they can actually get to enough susceptible people to cause overload in the medical system. Right now, we're getting people who are unsure, and you're getting regular flu sufferers mixed in with the coronavirus sufferers. Flu can be coronavirus, but the COVID sufferers, and we're getting a real burden on the medical system when it's absolutely not necessary. If we cover our faces, don't touch our faces, and clean our hands, and social distancing, and wash our clothes, and self-impose a quarantine, if we've traveled to places where there's a good chance that someone there had it and we weren't protected before we visit others, I think we'll do a lot to deal with cutting down the incidence, flattening the curve, and making this all go away. It will be a different world after. It will be a different world after. Because we'll have a greater awareness of all of these things. And that's not a bad thing. Let's try and keep the number of deaths to a minimum.
There was one other question that was popped up here. Some people, you talked about the virus living on, or how long it can live on various surfaces and stuff. What should our level of concern be about, like, things that are coming to us via Amazon, or or things we're getting from the grocery, things like that?
Great question. Great question. Assume that they are infected. You should have gloves before you take any package. You should take anything out of any packaging. If you have an ethyl alcohol and water mixture to spray, or 0.5% hydrogen peroxide mixture to spray, because most people should be ordering their food, right? Should be. And that is an excellent, whoever asked the question, it's an excellent question. That's exactly what should be done. Then discard the gloves and put everything out in the trash.
Okay, Lorraine's asking a question about immunity with after post-exposure. I know that sometimes, like with the flu, people have to worry about it, relapsing into it, which means they never really completely got over it. And what's the situation going to be with corona? And then also, if you had flu, I think it makes sense that you might be more susceptible to corona this time. But what about multi-infections and things along those lines?
All right, the way that viruses mutate, understand that antibodies are a lock and key apparatus. In other words, you have a specific antigen, you develop a specific antibody. If it changes even slightly, the antibody may not be able to kill it because it'll be the wrong one. This is what the issue could be with the vaccine if the virus mutates quickly. And so, can you reinfect? There's a chance that if you get over this, and most people get over without even knowing they had it, and it mutates and you come across a mutation, you may be able to catch that. In theory, you cannot be infected with the exact same virus that you've developed an antibody to, because the antibody will combat it. This is just what we need to know. Listen, all the HOCA coaches know. There was a 2003 paper on the MRET water killing SARS. SARS is a coronavirus. I've seen several papers on the silver killing H5N1, SARS, and HIV. This, I understand, is a virus that's similar in structure to HIV with nowhere near the lethal aspect.
So you mentioned one thing that I'm curious about now. You mentioned mutation. What causes the virus to mutate, and what's the likelihood that we could see a reoccurrence because of a mutation?
Over time, highly likely. That's why we get a different bout of flu every year, because we get a different mutation of the flu virus. Okay, so let's suppose you have 1,000 viruses of COVID-19, as we know it, infecting you. You develop an antibody and you kill off 999, but one, which doesn't make you sick, changes, survives, and goes on to start a new strain of mutation. That's the simplest way to put it. It's more complex, but that's to understand that it will change over environmental factors.
Awesome. Well, Howie, I think I think I speak for everyone. I want to thank you for your time tonight. I know this is something you're very passionate about, and that if we are diligent and we take and we're cautious, maybe overcautious. I know that only about a third of the United States right now has shut down. There are places that that they have done nothing to this point yet. They canceled schools here about a week ago. We got a notification tonight that businesses are going to be closed except for the non-essentials, and they're being very proactive here that they're not being in a lot of places. But I think that these are great tips to do that. If anybody wants to find out about accessing more information that our coaches have available, please reach out to me. I can show you that program and what's available with that. But Howie, thank you for your time, and thank you so much for your diligence and your passion for educating us to make sure that we stay safe, but also that we can keep those that are most important to us safe as well. So anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, they can either reach out to you or reach out to me. We'll try and deal with them. If you're looking for solutions, they can reach out to you, reach out to me, reach out to any HOCA coach.
Awesome. So guys, you have a great night. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all very soon.